But I want to tell you guys one thing in particular. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter how old you are, how much money you have. Your image, your reputation, your personal brand is a tool.
I've done 7 tour lectures so far, and with an average audience size of about 2,500, and they're going great. They're unbelievably positive. Almost everybody dresses up, which I think is really cool. When I went out on tour in 2018, before I went out, I thought I wanted to do this like 100% right, or at least as close to that as I could manage. So I went out and bought some expensive suits, and I spent way more money on, this is one of them actually.
You look great, by the way.
Thank you,
Okay.
thank you. Way more money than I ever thought I'd spend on clothes, and I really felt quite bad about it. I thought maybe it was an extravagance, but I thought, no way, man, I'm going to see if I can nail this dead on, and I'm going to be speaking to, 100,000 people. I'm going to look as sharp as I possibly can. And one of the consequences of that has been that young men in particular come to the lecture tour dressed up in suits, 3-piece suits. Or the couples come and they're dressed up like they're coming to a wedding. So that's really something. And, our whole culture pushes the idea that teenage life, or even childhood for that matter, but teenage life is some sort of pinnacle, and then everybody dresses down so they look, especially men, they look like overgrown 10-year-olds, and there's something extremely demeaning about that. And so to provide people with the opportunity to dress up in a classic manner and to look like adults, to present themselves in that manner, there's something very attractive about that, because we haven't done that in our culture. That's been, I would say, downplayed in importance or for certainly since the 1960s. It's just fashion, fashion moves around, and it usually drifts from the top down. And so when formality becomes the norm, but that drifts down, say, to the working class, then the upper class thinks, well, we can't do that because that would, associate us with the unfashionable people, and then they dress down. And so then that drifts down the hierarchy. And so there's some of it's just fashion, but a lot of it too is this idea that this sort of reflexive, rebellious attitude that anything that violates traditional norms, or even anything that's associated with patriarchal oppression and adulthood, is to be eliminated in favor of what's hypothetically a more free individuality. But it's not, because everybody looks the same. I was in Washington 4 or 5 years ago, maybe longer than that. It's probably longer than that, when I first went in the summer. And one of the things that really struck me, all these people wandering around these great monuments, is all the men looked like overgrown 10-year-olds. They looked exactly like their kids, except they were bigger. They looked like they'd been inflated with a bicycle pump. And I thought, this is weird that adults are dressing like children, and not good. And so some of it's fashion, but some of it's also that. Yeah, well, I talked to my father about this years ago, because he always wore a suit when he was a teacher. He's still alive. He's a teacher, and he always wore a suit. And I asked him why one day, and he said because it was his way of showing respect for the students. And I'm not saying that everyone who doesn't dress in a suit is being disrespectful, but there's something about outfitting yourself for the task at hand. And there's also something about attempting to put some effort into putting your best foot forward. And I don't really buy the it takes more time in the morning argument. It takes a bit more time, but once you, before I went on this tour, I went through all my clothing and I tossed out everything that didn't fit, and which included a number of suits that were old, and I had to organize them, and that took about a day to get my closet in order. But then from then on, it was actually a pleasure in some sense.
But I want to tell you guys one thing in particular. It doesn't matter what color you are. It doesn't matter how old you are, how much money you have. Your image, your reputation, your personal brand is a tool. A lot of guys, we don't understand that what you put on communicates to the world. We just look at it as clothes. And a lot of us are like, I ain't spending no money on no clothes. I'm not going to blow my money on no clothes. I'm not going to waste my money on no clothes. Why do I need to spend money on something that I'm going to throw away? All these other things, not realizing that, look, you know how it works. When someone is looking like they belong in that part or whatever role, it's been said over and over and over again. Guys, your image is important. If you don't care about it, if you're just getting by, then you don't get upset if you're not getting the outcomes you want. And a lot of times guys don't want to hear that truth. We just don't. Think about what you're wearing, put a little thought into it, and stop acting like clothes and your image is just this disposable thing that no one's supposed to care about, or that you're special and the rules don't apply to you. Guys, a lot of guys don't want to hear that because it goes counter to what they believe. And if you don't think it is, go dress like a homeless person this weekend. Go waddle around in the mud and go dress like a homeless person and walk around this weekend and see how much differently you get treated. That seems extreme to some guys. You have to dress the part. You need to look like you're about business to have business happen, whether it's personal or professional. If you were going to go look for a defense attorney, you wouldn't hire someone that did not look hard. The rules are there. You know it exists. And the guys I want to talk to are the ones that understand, look, your image is important. Use it and as a tool to get what you want. It's not a waste of time. It's not a waste of money. You just have to manage your image and handle it correct. And here's the thing. A lot of us weren't taught this. A lot of us were taught that dressing, especially if you came from the Bible Belt, you were taught that image is vanity, image is sinful, and we got all this cultural programming to overcome. So while other guys or other people realize, you know what, image is important and crucial, just as important as education and knowledge and everything else. It's the other part of the pie. It goes hand in hand. I'm trying to arm a lot of guys saying, you know what, quality is better than quantity. Fit is better than brand or fashion. None of this stuff is controversial. If you want to walk around sagging, dressing a stereotypical way or a way that doesn't really communicate who you are or what you're trying to accomplish, cool. But don't get upset with the outcomes. The outcomes are going to be the way they are. There are rules. The world works according to rules. You have it. Even the diehard people who say, it ain't me, I'm not like that, I'm better than, I'm more elevated in my thinking. Okay, well, go dress like a homeless person. Like I say, prove it to yourself. But overall, guys, understand this. The problem most guys have with image, and it's because we weren't taught, we don't understand it, and people in general, men in particular, things we don't understand or things that we don't know, we tend to shun them versus trying to understand how some people have a currency exchange mindset. We worry about price tag versus what we're getting. So instead of asking me when I spend $150 for a basic t-shirt, that is a loaded question. You've already said it's a basic t-shirt and $150. Tell me what you're getting for $150. Tell me what the shirt is made of. Tell me how does it fit and how does it fit into your image. O'Shea was talking about it. He bought a $60 pair of shoes that look really nice and look like the $400 pair of shoes, but then he wore them and inside of 4 months they're cracking, tearing up, and he's like, man, now I gotta go out and replace those cheap shoes. Are the most expensive thing you know. Instead of debating the cost, understand the point. But a lot of times, I'm just gonna go in, dudes just wanna be right. You just wanna be right. You don't wanna understand what's going on. But ultimately, it comes down to this. 7 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Inside of 7 seconds of meeting or seeing someone, inside of 7 seconds, someone seeing you or meeting you for the first time, they make 11 different assumptions about you. Those assumptions stick. They will not change without a lot of effort and work. Everyone has an image. Use it to your advantage. Most people don't. Most people don't. And the people that do get the outcomes that go with it. The people that don't get the outcomes that go with that. The guys I'm trying to work with are the guys that don't realize how important their image is and then want to do something about it, then understand, man, just by making a tweak here or a tweak there, my outcomes are so much better. That's why when you go to a job interview, go out to a nightclub, whatever, the guy that comes in looking a certain way tends to get treated a certain way. You know who they are. You go into a job interview, 10 candidates are lined up, then somebody comes in looking a certain way, you're like, dang, there's no way I can compete with that. Well, how do you know? You lost on the image battle. But if you go in being the best version of you, there's just no downside to that. And there's no counter argument to that. In general, men suffer from not knowing. A lot of times we don't know. Brothers in particular, we love to argue and start shit. I will say this directly to brothers. Honestly, the reality out there is I have gotten more doors open for me that have been traditionally closed based upon my appearance. I dress the way I dress for me. I have a brand. You have a brand. Everyone has a brand. What do people say about you when you leave the room? That is your brand. That is your image. That is your reputation. There's no two ways about it. Your question is it working for you or is it not? Is it getting you the outcomes you want? Is it not? Can it get you better outcomes? The people I want to work with are the people who understand they have a brand and they want to tweak it, or the ones that are waking up saying, man, I didn't know I had a brand, but how can I use it to make me better? You can see the woman of your dream. You aren't carrying yourself in a certain way. You're not going to even get to the point to where she can see what kind of great person you are. You're not going to get there. You can be eminently qualified for a position. You could have all the credentials and it could be your turn, but do not look the part. You're not going to even get an opportunity. You know that. And instead of being upset that that's the reality, accept it. Use it to your advantage. Men do that. Bottom line, whether you believe it or not, your image is crucial. It's important.